Hey you guys, how's it going? Um, so this is basically um, a response to a patron request. That's really the purpose of this stream. So for any of you who don't know, I do have a Patreon where for one of the tiers, for like the $10 tier, you're able to formally request either a topic, relating to philosophy or theology, or something of that nature. And yeah, I'll basically either do a video on it or a series of streams on it. And basically, you get one per the month that you're a patron for that tier. So, like, if you're a patron for like a number of months, you get like a number of basically video or stream topic requests that are kind of due to you. So that's what this is basically. I've been asked to react or respond to this funny little guy here. I guess he goes by Third Eagle Books, which honestly is kind of already, I'm getting the sense that this is partially sincere, partially a grift. I mean, I think to a large extent he does seem to be out to make money. I think that he is very... I think a lot of this is just sensationalism, honestly. I think he is also just crazy. I think he is insane, but I also think that he's kind of a bit of an opportunist. I've actually been watching his stuff for a while, on and off, like just out of morbid curiosity, essentially. I was watching his stuff during like the Synod on the Family. I don't know how many of you remember that from 2014. That got everybody up in arms. And one thing I find interesting about this guy, and I guess we'll kind of find this as we play through a bit of this here. I'll basically be tonight. Basically, I'll be here for about an hour, and then if I don't finish it, then we'll just continue on some other time with it. But yeah, like what's interesting about this guy is that a lot of these Catholic a lot of these Catholic commentators, or not commentators, a lot of these Catholic conspiracy people, a lot of the times, so if they are basically sedevacantists, they're like full-on sedevacantists. They like, or traditional sedevacantists. I think this is really one of the only sort of insane conspiracy Catholic guys who, and like in a prophecy as well, who's interestingly like he's sort of a benevicantist. So like he actually accepts, presumably, like the legitimacy of the Second Vatican Council and like Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict, Paul VI, John the 23rd. That's kind of an interesting angle. You don't really see that too often. Usually, like if they're going down this rabbit hole, they're just like full on like John the 23rd was a Mason, an anti-pope, and like Second Vatican Council was a result of Masonry, and so. This isn't usually the kind of content I make. This isn't usually the stuff I tend to respond to. But I mean, some of the stuff that he says is, I guess, like a lot of it is crazy. But some of it is also, I guess, kind of interesting to talk about here. So I guess he wants a bit of a full screen mode. I mean, I can't really do much of that, but I guess I'll just make it a little bit bigger for you. I want to still have my background here, so I'm not going to fill the whole screen with it. But make it a little bit bigger here. Okay. All right, cool. All right, well, let's just get into it then. Let's just get into it.
I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the Third Eagle of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, there's no way I'm watching this at normal speed, by the way. Sorry.
Host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse, and the co-prophet of these end times.
Okay, that's just annoying.
On that amazing music video called Gangnam Style by the South Korean pop artist Psy. And I believe this video is a prophecy of the
Maybe I'll go at it a little slower. A little slower. I'll do 1.25 for you.
end times from Enoch. And on this program, I want to talk about the martyrdom of Pope Benedict XVI, as shown in Psy's video.
I have several questions.
Oh, that's kind of cringe, but okay.
From Enoch, I believe he is giving the date for this event. However, I have not figured out the numbers exactly. I am going to give them to you, and maybe you can help me find what Enoch is talking about. If you visit my YouTube channel, you will find I have a playlist there entitled Evil Vatican Signs and Logos. And today I will be adding another video to that playlist about this ridiculous image of Pope Francis called Flat Francis. And if you look closely, you'll see he's got red eyes.
I mean, it's just a common ugly modern art that they do. Like, they do flats, and I think that's kind of just in that vein. But okay.
I don't know. You think they're saying that Pope Francis is some kind of Satan? He's got a fish hook for a nose, got a goofy smile on his face. And what this is some kind of a campaign by the Catholic Extension Society. If you look at that sign the Pope is waving, that is the logo for the Catholic Extension Society. And of course, they love crazy images like that cross. I mean, that's a perverted cross. Looks more like chemtrails, if you ask me. In any event, what they are trying to do is they want you to go to their site and download this image. That's why they've got dashes around the outside of it. That's how you're supposed to cut it out. And then you're supposed to take a selfie with yourself and send it into them. And this is supposed to welcome Pope Francis this September. Now, this is from their site, so you can see what they've got on there. Welcome Flat Francis. Now, that's an interesting title for the Pope, Flat Francis. I mean, it is alliterative, but flat to me means boring and dull and two-dimensional. Of course, maybe they consider him the false prophet, too. Who knows?
I mean, I don't know, or it's just the the art style, but okay. Oh, the great, an office meme.
program, I want
Okay.
to talk about the possibility that our retired Pope, Pope Benedict, is in
Yeah, I mean, this is a parody, but I guess, like, there's also what he believes in
the Prime Minister
incorporated
of
in it,
Israel,
so,
Benjamin
you know.
Netanyahu, is in fact the prophet Elijah.
Like this seems to be like a sort of, the way it's compiled together is meant to make fun of the guy, but it is containing his true beliefs, so, you know.
And don't discount the possibility that Almighty God has a sense of humor.
Yeah, he's a nice looking guy. I mean, he's kind of like you wouldn't suspect that he's insane. He actually seems quite warm and inviting, and actually kind of, so I guess that's kind of part of the appeal, honestly.
In other words, the two B's, Benjamin and Benedict, are actually the two E's, Enoch and Elijah.
So this guy's like a full-out Zionist then. So this guy's like, so he thinks that Netanyahu is actually the prophet Elijah, huh?
In any event, this past week, Pope Benedict gave a very interesting interview.
What I noticed about this guy is that he's actually very much, I think he's more of a conservative than he is a Catholic. So he's like more of a MAGA boomer, like Israel shill, than he is like a traditionalist Catholic, which is kind of an interesting spin. Like he seems really into like American conservative politics. I remember I was watching him a while back, and he was like really convinced that Trump was going to become Catholic, that Trump was going to become this, like, I guess, integralist Catholic leader or something. There would be some miraculous conversion, like Melania was going to somehow, I guess, because she had been depicted, like she had her picture taken in a church of some kind, and she had a Catholic background, and this was going to usher in some kind of a new, like, dawn of Catholic imperium. That seemed to be what he was going for, but I feel like that was really just his way of playing into the MAGA audience, like the QAnon, the Q boomer audience. And there seems to be like this weird sort of a convergence, if you will, between like the QAnon MAGA boomers on the one hand and like schizo tradcath boomers on the other hand. They kind of come together, and I feel like that kind of constitutes his core audience.
To a magazine in Italy, and I want to read excerpts from this because I think it shows that Enoch is prophesying for 1260 days. So let me read this for you, and here's the headline. You can see what it says. I got this from LifeSite News, and they are very
life science. Okay, that's pretty fitting, actually.
interesting website. I have them bookmarked, and you should also.
Of course, he finds it interesting. I mean, what does that say about the people who are attracted to the life site? By the way, that it's basically like this guy's main source of
Pope
news.
Emeritus Benedict breaks silence. Well, actually, he has given quite a few interviews, but this is the one that has made the headlines. Speaks of deep crisis facing church post-Vatican II. Now, this writer believes he is criticizing Vatican II, but actually I think he is secretly criticizing Pope Francis, who, as you, my subscribers, already know, I consider to be the false prophet. Although, remember, he has not yet fulfilled any of the Bible prophecies about the false prophet. So
one thing I don't know is, did he always think that Francis was an anti-pope, or did he just kind of come to that conclusion later?
withholding final judgment, but I think we are going to find out very soon who he actually is. The more I study Pope Francis' apostolic exhortation called...
Because he keeps calling him Pope Francis. I don't know, like, I know he thinks he's an anti-pope, but he keeps calling him Pope Francis, which is actually... Like, he hasn't used the word Bergoglio once, which is kind of abnormal.
Amoris Laetitia, the more I realize what a flawed document it is. And we've already been examining very much on this program that insignificant, supposedly little footnote, number 351, which says that divorced and remarried Catholics can, on occasion, receive Holy Communion, even though they are living in mortal sin. And that is a very grave error.
You know, this is actually something I kind of want to talk about a little bit. I know it's like a lot not really funny or whatever, but I don't think I've ever formally addressed Amoris Laetitia. I don't think I've ever addressed that, like, in a stream or in a video. I did a little bit of a exchange with, like, Eric Ibarra and Tim Gordon, and we talked a bit about it there, but I haven't really talked about it on my own channels. So I think I want to just really quickly give you my take on it. And, well, the thing is, I don't really have a take on it in a certain sense, because I'm still trying to figure out what it's really trying to get at. I'm still trying to figure out to what extent is it really consistent with at least, like, the theological principles of, like, Familiaris Consortio, etc. And I know Eric Ibarra has basically come to the conclusion that there's no real way to square it in light of, like, the Buenos Aires bishops' guidelines with Catholic Orthodoxy. I'm at a point where I think that it runs right up to the edge of formally contradicting prior magisterium. It runs right up to the edge of that, but it falls short of it by just a hair. And the reason is because, like, when you read the guidelines, and I'll pull them up actually, let me find them just really quickly. Because the Buenos Aires Bishop's guidelines are, like, the authoritative lens through which to read the document, because it was elevated into the acta by the Pope. And so that basically is going to give us what the authoritative interpretation of Amoris is. And it really centers around, like, guideline number 6, because guideline number 6 of these Buenos Aires bishops guidelines, like guideline number 6, is basically what, like, this is the new material. In other words, this is the new application. This is what's different from Familiaris Consortio and the proposals of Benedict XVI on the question of how to incorporate divorced and remarried Catholics into the sacramental life of the Church. And it says this explicitly. But so I want to read really quickly what footnote number 6 says and just kind of get my take on it, and then we'll continue with this. It says, in more complex cases, when a declaration of nullity has not been obtained, the above-mentioned option may not, and he's talking about John Paul and Benedict's scenario of, like, living as brother and sister, may not, in fact, be feasible. Nonetheless, a path of discernment is still possible. If it is acknowledged that, in a concrete case, there are limitations that mitigate responsibility and culpability, especially when a person believes he or she will incur a subsequent fault by harming the children in a new union, Amoris Laetitia offers a possibility of having access to the sacraments of reconciliation in the Eucharist. So that's guideline number 6. And essentially, what I think it's really kind of trying to get at is not so much contravening the objective moral law here, but I guess overinflating, if you will, the criteria of mitigating culpability that would make a sin fall short of mortal sin. That would basically keep it in the venial territory by virtue of some imperfection of the intellect or by virtue of some imperfection of the will. And clearly it's not talking about an imperfection of the intellect, because it's kind of acknowledging that the couple knows that what they're doing is wrong. So it would have to, the imperfection would have to be found in the will. And what it's basically trying to envision is a scenario in which, like, let's say just some woman, divorcee, basically, who's quote-unquote married to a new partner, years later becomes Catholic or reverts or converts or whatever, recognizes that she's still validly married to her former spouse, and it basically wants to propose to live in continence with the new husband. The new husband, though, says, I can't do that. I'm going to leave the kids if you impose this continence on me. And basically, like, the kids are going to be left in poverty and severe impoverished conditions. And so, out of self-defense, defense for the children, for the welfare of the family, she acquiesces to the husband's demands for, an active sexual experience or whatever. And I think that the only way to see that as a scenario that can be consistent with licitly admitting such a woman to communion would be if it is discerned that this woman's capacity to resist the objective action of continuing sexual relations with this man, if it can be shown, discerned, proven, demonstrated that this woman's psychological condition is such that she's unable to actually freely deliberate an act of restraint, then it would necessarily fall short of the conditions that would make it a mortal sin. And so there wouldn't be necessarily any barrier to the sacrament of communion. Now, in my view, such a psychological condition is not really possible. I don't really, like, in the concrete world, I don't see how that scenario can really happen. But what it does show is that what Amoris Laetitia is proposing through that number 6 guideline is really just another articulation of Catholic moral theology in terms of the conditions for mortal sin. And on that basis, like, purely in the abstract, it can kind of fit. But I do think that it's quite pernicious in practice to open the floodgates in that way. You might be able to find some scenario in which it could apply, but I do think that it is a problematic expression, and I'm not the only one who thinks that, by the way. You have other Orthodox, like, obedient sons of the church who've kind of come to the same conclusion. I've really tried to just kind of reduce it in a way to John Paul and Benedict's scenario, but there's really no way to do that. And it's even telling you that there is a development here. There's primarily a change in discipline, yes, but it's a change in discipline that gives the false impression, I think, that of just how likely it is for those conditions to really be met in the real world. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Amoris. So I kind of want to take that opportunity to talk about that.
It is referred to by Daniel and by our Lord in the Olivet Discourse. Because what Francis is doing is taking the daily sacrifice away from the prince. He is invalidating.
Okay, so yeah, he's talking about Daniel 9 and Daniel 12 here, and I guess, like, this is actually something that treads, like, to to jump on, because what they think, like a lot of sedevacantists, like they think that the invalidation of the mass through like the Novus Ordo mainly is usually what they go to, is itself a fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy that the daily sacrifice will cease in the last days under the reign of the Antichrist. And even, a lot of traditional Catholic commentators will suggest that one of the signs of the last day is that the sacrifice will be suppressed, like the sacrifice of the Mass will be suppressed. But usually what they're talking about is you will have some hostile, anti-Catholic, secular ruler that's gonna clamp down on it. It's gonna say, no, like we're gonna ban public, kind of like what they did in the French Revolution, for example. Like it's that kind of thing, but on a broader scale. And then I'm sure there were probably French Catholic commentators who made references to the Book of Daniel while that was going on. I couldn't name them, but I'm pretty sure that likely happened. But the problem with this guy is that he seems to think that, what does he think about that?
Of all priests in his new religion, the one world religion. Would you believe the Vatican has come up with another evil?
Yeah, because I think he believes, if I'm getting this right, he believes that Francis himself, through Amoris Laetitia, it's very convoluted. It is quite insane. He thinks Francis, because of Amoris Laetitia, has watered down the importance of the Eucharist so much that he has basically forced priests into such a lax pastoral disposition that they're no longer able to properly intend to consecrate the Eucharist. This is kind of what he's forced into, because he's not like a traditional sedevacantist. If he were a traditional sedevacantist, this would be easy as pie, because he would just say that like the Novus Ordo is invalid, therefore Daniel's prophecy is fulfilled. So
satanic logo, which they are promoting.
But like he has to believe the Novus Ordo is valid. So
in Dublin, Ireland, and in the last couple of years here on YouTube, I have had to point out dozens of very evil designs coming out of the Vatican ever since Pope Francis took over. Ever since the Holy City has been trampled underfoot by the Gentiles. And I've been doing this, as I say,
music is kind of
aggravating. I want to show
aggravating.
you a couple that I pointed out to you before. This is for the year of mercy.
You know what? In retrospect, this probably is a demonic image, just because we all know who came up with this one. Father Rupnik, like the sexual predator who like sacrilegiously sexually abused nuns and all this terrible stuff. Yeah, I mean, it probably, in light of Father Rupnik, in light of what we know now, this is actually like, I guess he is a prophet. Like, I guess he is a prophet on some level, because he was able to.
Maybe you remember this. And according to the Vatican, this is Jesus carrying Adam. The only problem is that's not an Adam. That's an Eve that he is carrying. In other words,
I don't know about that, but like, I probably there are probably some demonic. Okay, this is
ago.
yeah.
I had a world meeting of families in Philadelphia, and I showed
Probably
you
is a
this
demonic
design.
image on some level, just because who made it.
Shapes in the background. I mean, they've hidden it fairly well. This is a promotion of homosexuality. All kinds of evil has taken over the Roman Catholic
I don't
Church
see that, but
because it is being
okay.
trampled under by the Gentiles. Now, here's the newest one. This is called Amoris, and they are having a world meeting of families, as I say, next year in Dublin. And if I focus in maybe a little bit, you can see what this whole...
I think we should, like, here's the thing. Yes, Amoris Laetitia, it's problematic in that pastoral application of doctrine, but we really should step back a little bit and just see that, like, Amoris Laetitia, if you read the vast majority of it, it's actually a very beautiful, like, apostolic exhortation. Like, the way it speaks about, like, marriage and the family and the, like, and you know, the divine, like, the divine institution of marriage, and like the theological symbolism behind marriage, and various modern errors that are attacking the sanctity of the family. Like the only magisterial condemnation of transgenderism, for example, is found in Amoris Laetitia 56. So like, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, so much of Amoris Laetitia is just excellent pastoral theology, spiritual theology, theology of marriage, wonderful development of familiaris consortio in that sense. Like, so, like, we can't get too laser focused on that, like on just that one footnote. It does not undermine the entirety of the document. It really doesn't. And like, there's really nothing sinister going on here. Like, yeah, we want a world meeting of families. The whole synod was about the family, about how the family can how a Catholic understanding of the family can help to perfect the new evangelization and just all of those things. So it's like,
Amoris says,
yeah,
that is the evil design of 3 6s. Now, having a cross on top of the world is not that unusual, and in fact, it would be Christian. But not to have the world formed by 3 6s. I want to do another video about that amazing, miraculous, or should I say demonic smoke ring that appeared over Pope Francis's head during his
the thing is, this guy has all sorts of weird, creepy art in his backyard. So it's like, he's kind of one to talk with the art.
At the Vatican on Pentecost Sunday. That was a little over a month ago. And some people are saying that the smoke ring formed a halo over his head. Some are saying that it formed 2 doves over his head. I'm saying that it formed a snake over his head. And in fact, the 2 so-called doves become 2 snakes.
I've kind of lost what he's talking about. I'm going to move on.
Which indicates Psy is playing the role of the Antichrist in this video. Now, we've already looked at where the 7 heads and 10 horns are. We've already seen where Psy looks like a leopard, walks like a bear, talks like a lion. And we've seen where he is the lawless one, and that's found in the title itself, because I believe Gangnam should be Gang Man. In other words, Psy is the...
This is why I just think that, like, this is where the grift comes out. Like, this is where the grifter side of him... There's no way he really believes that the 2012 hit Gangnam Style music video is really that spiritually significant, like, eschatologically speaking. Like, he doesn't really believe that has, like, eschatological significance. Like, this is where the grift comes out. This is where he's looking for things so that he can clickbait, so that he can promote clickbait, so that he gets more viewership. Maybe even like coming upon some algorithmic accident to get ad revenue or something. So I think this is I'm not even going to take this seriously, because I think that this is where the grift part comes out. I don't think he really believes any of this.
Where Gangnam Style portrays the Antichrist as having a fierce countenance, as being
I bet this was from 2012.
and as looking stout. As far as a fierce countenance goes, or some Bibles say stern-faced, Psy is almost always looking angry in this video, especially when he uses the key phrase, open Gangnam Style. Let's take a look at a few examples. Even in this very first scene, Psy seems to have a fierce countenance and a snarl on his lips. Nor does he look happy in this horse barn scene. Of course, I can see why Psy would not be too happy in this scene where he has spots like a leopard.
No, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if that checks out.
Once again, here on the bus, Psy is displaying a fierce countenance. And after the
he's also
Psy,
singing.
as the Antichrist, marches angrily towards the camera, pointing his finger. Even when Psy is dancing with his newfound girlfriend for the first time, he doesn't seem very happy about it.
So he obviously spent time before this thinking, okay, this is a hit song.
Psy even seems to bark.
What can I look for?
Here, Psy seems to actually
To
want
find
to punch his new girlfriend.
the demonological symbolism in it. And on that basis, how can I increase my YouTube ad revenue by this percent? Like, that's all that is. I refuse to believe it's anything more than that.
Cisco. Well, I don't know if he is demonic.
That's why he probably doesn't care about how crazy he sounds. Like, this is just the way to increase ad revenue so that he can continue on his grift here. Now, that's not to say he's entirely insincere, but
look at this
yeah.
flat Francis. Now, first of all, notice all the V's in that image. For example,
didn't we already do this
the shape
one?
Of his mouth, the opening of his cape forms an upside down V, and of course V
There's also just
in Latin numbers
geometrical shapes.
signifies the number 5. And if you watch the Crocs at all, he'll tell you that we are entering the 5th age. The Illuminati like to use the V to indicate the fifth age. And the fifth age, that refers to Daniel's statue of Nebuchadnezzar, where the statue is made out of gold, silver, brass, iron, and the lead. The final one, the feet, they are made out of iron and clay. The fifth age, that's the age we are about to enter. The one world tyranny headed up by the Antichrist. So they are probably trying to tell us that the Pope is part of the Illuminati.
Oh, great, the Spider-Man meme. Okay, thank
V
you.
of the rosary and the V of his cape opening form a Masonic square and compass. That is not accidental, people. Are they telling us that the Pope is a Mason? Now take a closer look at that rosary. It's very...
I mean, that's not a rosary, that's his pectoral cross.
There are 10 beads in each decade of the rosary, plus one Our Father. But the beads are all the same size on this rosary. There are 11 beads on the left, 11 beads on the right, and one bead at the bottom of the V shape. 11, of course, is a favorite Illuminati number. It is also a favorite homosexual number.
Is
Are they
it?
telling us that Pope Francis is a homosexual? If you add the beads on the rosary together, there are 23 beads. Of course, we all know what that
It's not a rosary.
2 before 3, or over 3, symbolizes man before God, or over God.
I get it.
I don't get it. And it yields the
John,
French
John,
thirds,
okay.
which is the decimal point 666. Are they saying that Pope Francis is of the Antichrist? Now remember, pay attention to these words, because, as I say, this is actually the prophet Enoch speaking. He also speaks of a
I mean, you could spend like a whole lot of time to dissect the art in his home and find all sorts of like demonological connections, probably, if you squinted
there
really
is no
hard.
salvation outside the church. This purported change of dogma has led, in the Pope's eyes, to a loss of the missionary zeal in the church. Any motivation for a future missionary commitment was removed. This is true. Why join the church if you don't have to be saved? Pope Benedict asked the piercing question that arose after this palpable change of attitude of the church. Why should you try to convince people to accept the Christian?
This is why I think he's like really a grifter, because he knows that trad world is at the time he was doing this, was very, very immersed in like benefit contests, conspiracies, and prophecies, and all that kind of thing. So he's really leaning into that. And he also, I don't know how many of you have watched this guy's stuff, but back in 2020, he leaned heavily into the 2020 election. He leaned heavily into like QAnon, conspiracy theories and prophecy about Trump. And it was, for a while, his channel was mainly about Trump. It was Trump news. So that's why I think that I really have doubts about this guy's authenticity.
When they can be saved even without it. So, as I say, pay attention to what Pope Benedict is saying, and he has made other pronouncements after he is assassinated and resurrected on the Mount of Olives. And people
Well, it didn't really, pan out, did it?
understand that he is actually the prophet Enoch, and Benjamin Netanyahu is actually the prophet Elijah. All of the writings of these two people will be closely analyzed, and the reason is because Scripture says that they prophesied for 1,260 days. Now, Pope Benedict resigned February the 11th, 2013, a little over 3 years ago. 1,260 days.
Here's the thing, people don't understand this about Pope Benedict. Like, he had wanted to retire for decades. When he was prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith under John Paul II, he had wanted to resign for a long time because he wanted to focus on writing. He wanted to write his magnum opus, Jesus of Nazareth. He really wanted to do all of that stuff. He wanted to spend a lot of time to himself in contemplative prayer. He wanted to live kind of a quasi-monastic life. It's actually quite fitting. It's sort of reminiscent of Celestine V, who was the last pope who resigned. He really wanted to live this like monastic life, and John Paul II refused. He didn't allow him to do that because John Paul thought that he needed him in that position. And so when John Paul II dies and he's elected pope, really, I mean, I feel like he was just looking for an opportunity to just resign himself. This idea that he was forced out or he wanted to stay as pope just totally goes against his whole professional, like his whole like episcopal history, his history as a cardinal, his history as a prefect, his history as a curial official, and his history as pope. Like, it just goes against his own pattern of behavior.
Would be up in this August.
Yeah, this Netanyahu business is just...
Resigned, or from the time he actually resigned, which was February the 28th, or maybe when the time Pope Francis took over, which was sometime in March.
Like, how can someone who hates Jesus be considered Elijah? Like, maybe if Elijah was next to the transfigured Lord, you know, quoting the Talmud about where Jesus is going to end up, maybe then it would make sense to say he's the second coming of Elijah, but...
That is why we have to pay attention to what Pope Benedict says. On this program, I want to talk about perhaps a less significant detail, which is...
Yeah, like, what's this art next to him? I mean, if anyone can just read demonological symbolism into art, like, I'm starting to wonder about him, honestly.
At the very beginning of his exhortation, in paragraph 3, where he makes the nonsensical statement that time is greater than space. And it's interesting because a lot of theologians are countering...
Time is greater than... Time is the number of motion. Time, and the number of motion is basically like the quantitative measurement of reductions of potency to act. And that transcends... that transcends physical space, because the angels they operate according to like of eternity, which is not fully eternity itself. And so you can sort of number angelic motions, and so in that sense they have some degree of temporality in their relations. So time actually is broader, and therefore at a higher level, at a higher metaphysical level, it's on a higher ontological plane, if you will, than space. So that's actually totally... that checks out.
What else he has said in this apostolic exhortation. But I don't think anyone has zeroed in on this very foolish statement that somehow one element of the universe is greater than another. As you know, the universe is divided into 3 elements: time, space, and matter. And that reflects the divine Trinity, Father, Son, and
does it?
Spirit. The Son is reflected by time because it's action. Matter reflects God the Father because it represents solidity. And space represents the Holy Spirit because it is mysterious. So when
that last one's a bit of a stretch. I think you spent all of 2 minutes on that one.
Is somehow greater than space. He's actually implying that Jesus is greater than the Holy Spirit.
Oh, okay.
No, God!
I'm sorry, I can't watch that Office clip. I can't do that.
All those
Okay.
reasons that were given, that Pope Benedict resigned because he was ill, or he was at death's door, or he was too feeble, that was all baloney, and I told you at the time that it was. I told you at the time that he was forced out. In fact, I told you at the time, more than 3.5 years ago, after Psy came out with that video Gangnam Style, that was a prophecy of Pope Benedict as the man dressed in yellow being defeated by the Antichrist. And that prophecy came true.
You talking about anything? Are you talking about anything?
Now, lately, I have been studying scriptures, passages about the prophets Enoch and Elijah to see if there is any indication who they are in these end times. And I've come across a few. Let me read these to you. And this is from Zechariah 13, verse number 7. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd. Now, this is the prophet Enoch.
This music is giving me a headache,
Call him a
man.
shepherd because he is, in fact, Pope Benedict. After all, remember, Jesus told Peter to feed my sheep. Is this a clue? Way back in Zechariah that the prophet Enoch would be actually a pope, Pope Benedict. And against the man that cleaves to me, and of course I say that is the prophet Elijah. In other words, that would be Benjamin Netanyahu. Says the Lord of hosts, strike the shepherd.
But how? Like, he says this and it acts like it's just self-evident or intuitive in any way. Like, Benjamin Netanyahu is Jewish. He doesn't even believe in Jesus. How can he possibly... Does he explain that somewhere?
And the sheep shall be scattered. That refers to the Catholics who must flee their church, as Jesus said. When you see the abomination of desolation, let those who are in the field, that is the Catholic Church, flee and not take their coat. What they are trying to tell us, in my opinion, is that the Catholic Church has been taken over by the Antichrist.
What's these unsettling geometrical figures behind him? I mean, if anything, I'm wondering about him. I'm wondering if he's some kind of
The 3 6s are pretty
occultist.
obvious. I've outlined it for you. And the cross is minuscule. They are de-emphasizing the cross. They are emphasizing Satan. And that's because they have found out, just like the secular world, that if you want to be successful, you have to pay homage to the Lord of this world. And that is, of course, Satan. And that's not unusual in the secular world. For example, I'll give you another example. This is basically the same image.
Google.
3 6s. And I'm sure
Well,
you
no,
recognize that
I
logo.
don't see that.
Right,
I mean, Google is satanic, but
Listen, there's a lot to see in this life.
I mean, to be fair, Google imagery probably is rife with like satanic
Actually,
symbolism.
That's more subtle than what the Vatican came up with. And this is better what they should do. Why can't they have a symbol in which the cross is dominant, in which the cross is over the world? That would be perfectly all right. I could accept that. What they are using for their image, this is their image again, this is called a triscale. It's thousands of years old. It's based on a pagan symbol or logo, and I'll show you some other examples. I got this off of Google Images. There's lots of different ways that you can show a triscale, or a triskelion it's called. And in other words, it's got 3 different legs or 3 different arms. If it has 4 arms, it's called a swastika. If it has 2 arms, it's called a yin-yang. But all 3 are pagan. So I'm going to show this clip. This is a short clip taken from the actual broadcast.
I mean, you could probably make similar
St.
claims
Peter's
about
Basilica in
some
Rome,
variations of the
May 23rd,
Scrotum
Feast of
Fide,
Pentecost.
but
And as I say, the Pope's supporters are saying this indicates the Holy Spirit entering into Pope Francis. I'm saying it indicates the demonic entering into Pope Francis. But I will let you decide. I will show you the clip, and then I will show it to you in slow motion, and then I will show it to you in ultra slow motion. Let me know what
great.
you think.
gotta watch both of them.
Pope Francis has just finished incensing the altar, and this ring of smoke settles over his head.
That is a bit odd,
as you can
but
see, and it makes quite a few weird shapes.
But it's also in slow motion, and smoke just goes all over the place. It's
And then it
incense.
enters into the Pope after they become snakes. So now here is a
I don't know,
close-up,
man.
and you can see the smoke. It does look something like a halo at the beginning, but it quickly morphs into quite a few weird shapes. And you could say maybe one of them looks like a dove.
I mean, he doesn't even.
Certainly at the
I mean,
end,
yeah.
they both look like 2 snakes entering into Francis. Now here is a close-up, and I think you can see that it looks alive. This definitely is a demonic manifestation.
No, not that one, no.
Usual shapes. So I think it's up to us that we have to determine what is going on here, because this is not an ordinary smoke ring.
Incense.
Smoke always
That's what's
ascends.
going on.
It goes up. It never comes down. Here we see the smoke ring in very slow motion and as a close-up. And at the right, you see the smoke always rising. It never goes down. And it always dissipates, whereas this smoke ring does not dissipate. It's clearly a message. Is it a message from God or from Satan? Or is Satan's message being controlled by God? Because Satan is controlled by God. Is God telling us that this is not a halo? It is not a sign of the Holy Spirit entering into Pope Francis. It's a sign of 2 demonic entities entering into Pope Francis. Now, at this point, it does look something like a dove, but as you can see, it quickly morphs into 2 snakes. The snake on the right with its head is heading down towards Pope Francis's head. The one on the left slithers down in front, and if you look closely, you'll see that the one on the left enters into his heart at the very end. Take a close look at the bottom right. There is the snake entering into Pope Francis.
Well, I think it just dissipated.
This is a sure message for us in these end times.
Now in Daniel 7, verse number 20, the Antichrist is described as being stout, and some Bibles use the word great. Now if this means that the Antichrist will be somewhat overweight, then Psy does fit that description.
I don't think
Now, according to
so.
American standards, Psy would not be considered overweight, but in Korea, he is considered chubby.
I don't think anyone
If the
has that
Antichrist is
view.
considered stout, I believe that would fit Psy's appearance.
Now I want to talk about where I believe the martyrdom of Pope Benedict XVI is shown in this Gangnam Style video. And in order to do that, I have to revisit the man dressed in yellow scene. If you may remember, at the time, I said that this conflict between the Antichrist, that is Psy, and the man dressed in yellow, which is won by Psy, was an indication that 555, which was on the license plate of the man in yellow, will be defeated by 666, that is Psy, the Antichrist. And this is true. That is a correct interpretation. However, I said that this would be at the end, that Satan was boasting he would win, and I believe that was incorrect. I believe this shows that Satan will win during the tribulation, and that the number 555 refers to the Catholic Church, and that the Holy City, as found in Revelation 11:2, will be trodden under by the Gentiles. And therefore, this man in yellow was not a coward as I suspected at the time.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Now, let's zoom in on that cross. Do you see anything odd about that?
Okay.
The left arm is shorter than the right arm. That is not a perfect cross. It is an asymmetrical cross. Notice one side is darker than the other. That is not accidental. They did that on purpose. They don't want a pure, perfect cross.
Excuse me, what?
This is an anti-Christian cross. Very much like the other videos, if you go and watch that playlist.
It also could just be some intern who
But what's
didn't
really interesting
measure
is
it
to compare
properly.
the cross with the square and compass. The square and compass of the Masons is perfect. Notice where the beads cross the V, for example. That's a perfect intersection of those beads. Notice that there is no shadows on that form. That is perfectly balanced as far as light and shadow goes. So what are they telling us? They are telling us that that square and compass sits atop the cross. It's more important. It's perfect. It does not have any asymmetrical shadowing or shaping compared to the cross. The cross is inferior to the square and compass. That is the message that this artist is trying to tell us in this ridiculous flat Francis image. So now let's look.
Yeah, I think he just spends like a lot of time beforehand just looking for an angle. Like anything.
I have earmarked here, Daniel.
Does he even get a lot of engagement?
And I, Daniel, looked, and behold, as it were, two others stood. These are the two witnesses, Enoch and Elijah. One on this side upon the bank of the river, and another on that side on the other bank of the river. The prophet Elijah is the one on this bank of the river because that would be near Jerusalem. On the other bank of the river, that would be the prophet Enoch. And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is located in Israel, and Pope Benedict is located in Italy, far away from Israel.
Yeah, but how is he a prophet?
That is not a definite allusion necessarily to Pope Benedict, but it is a clue. Now let's look at Daniel 4, verse number 13. And I saw in the vision upon my head, upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. Now previously, I think I got these reversed. I think the watcher could be the prophet Elijah, and the holy one would be the prophet Enoch. Could that be a reference to the Holy Father, Pope Benedict? And I'm not surprised that Pope Francis finds ways to put down the Holy Spirit, because actually that is what he's doing when he says that the intention of priests can be changed. Because the three requirements for a priest to consecrate the Holy Eucharist are the same as the three divine persons. In other words, he must use the same words that Jesus did, and Jesus is the Word. He must use the same matter that Jesus did, and that is bread. By the way, I want to insert here that it doesn't necessarily have to be unleavened bread, as I have said on previous occasions, but it cannot be, let's say...
So he had absolutely no conception of the Eastern wing of the church before he did that video. Okay.
a chocolate chip cookie. It must be bread. And the third requirement is the intention must be the same as Jesus. And Jesus did not intend to give the Eucharist to the traitor Judas. He specifically sent Judas away from the Last Supper. Now this...
Well, no, Judas did communicate. And St. Thomas actually gives... There's a whole section in the Summa dedicated to explaining that about and how that is actually a reflection of of proper pastoral practice, because Judas wasn't a public sinner. Judas was not Judas didn't bring about public scandal. And so even if a priest knows that somebody is a sinner, that is not sufficient for the priest to deny them communion. What's sufficient for the priest to deny them communion is when that sin or scandal is public and manifest. So,
change, which Pope Francis has initiated in 2,000 years of church teaching, came about through subterfuge, according to Archbishop Forte. Could the man in yellow represent Pope Benedict XVI? Of course, a lot of people will say, well, the Pope is always dressed in white. And in fact, anytime a world leader wants a photo op with a Pope, one of the conditions is that the world leader will dress in a dark color and the Pope will dress in white. But the color yellow is also associated with the papacy. Let's take a look at the papal flag.
Yeah, but it's never yellow by itself. It can be what, like, it's always white and yellow.
As you can see in this design of the papal flag, white is equally important as yellow. In fact, the white and the yellow...
And also, I'm pretty sure this is a modern phenomenon, like, in terms of the history of,
and honey.
like,
Although the color yellow dominates,
the,
this man in yellow
papal
does wear
insignias.
a white undershirt. And I believe
Okay, so I
the
guess it does
girls
have white and
fleeing
yellow, but
away
whatever.
from the man in yellow is an indication of priestly celibacy.
Oh,
First time in
okay.
my life, I'm speechless. I got nothing.
So why should the man dressed in yellow represent our current pope, that is Pope Benedict? And the reason is because according to the prophecies of St. Malachi, Pope Benedict is the next to last pope. And that means that he will very likely be defeated by the Antichrist, just as Psy wins the dance-off with this man dressed in yellow. So where do I get the idea that Pope Benedict will be martyred? Let's take a look at the red-colored car that the man in yellow leaves the scene in. Red is universally known as the color of bloodshed and martyrdom. And after the man in yellow's defeat by Psy in the dance-off, he drives off in this car. And please notice the numbers on this license plate. Now, the 3 5s on the license plate, of course, indicate Mary's Rosary.
But they're not together.
Of course!
And they help to identify that the driver of this automobile symbolizes a pope. But also please note the 3, the 8, and the 9.
This is the worst.
Now, I'm not saying that these numbers on the license plate definitely give us a date for the martyrdom of Pope Benedict XVI. However, I do know that one of Enoch's major missions in these end times...
Oh, wait, let's look at those again, actually.
And the 9.
So he died. When did he die? He died. Let me look it up. Now I'm kind of curious. He died. Right, December 31st. So that's 12/3/1. So literally none of it can even be.
Pope Benedict XVI.
Okay.
However, I do know that one of Enoch's major missions in these end times is to give the timing of events. Could 3, for example, refer to 2013? Could 8 and 9 represent the day or the month, or vice versa?
It's possible that this happened. And if that happened,
Oh,
then
hey,
it's
Michael.
possible that then this may have happened. And then if that may have happened, it's also possible that this may have happened. And then if this may have happened, then it's possible that this other thing.
Yeah, that is pretty
Did this in
accurate.
fact happen? Ancient alien theorists say yes.
If and when Pope Benedict is martyred, I think we are going to see that these numbers on this license plate are very pertinent. And if Gangnam Style is prophesying the martyrdom of Pope Benedict XVI, that would coincide with the third secret of Fatima. In the third secret of Fatima, a bishop dressed in white is assassinated by military soldiers with knives and bullets.
Well, that clearly didn't
I think
happen.
this comparison is very significant. So after I counted
I mean, he just kind of withered away and died.
I decided to count the dashes around the outside of
He was
the
in his
dash.
90s. He lived for
I think that's
10
silly
years
of me,
afterward.
So I counted them and I came up with 65. One less than 66, the number of the Antichrist.
Like, you couldn't get more of, like, an anticlimactic death if you wanted it. Like, there's he outlived his papacy. Like, he was pope for 8 years and then he was retired for 10.
So I said, well, I better count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 65 dashes. But then I thought, I wonder if there is another dash in that image to give number 66. Take a closer look at that strange point
Oh, this
on
again.
the top of Pope Francis' head in his skull cap.
You are coping.
I mean, that's literally on all the Zucchettos, though. It all has that.
You just can't accept what you're seeing. Yes, you're coping and seeing.
But it has 2 horns. That horn is not pointed. The Antichrist has 10 horns. The false prophet has 2 horns. That horn is not pointed. It's flat on each end. That is your 66th dash.
Are you serious?
None of this is accidental, people.
This artist knew exactly what he was doing. Hey, maybe the
I don't
Catholic
think he
Service told them
did.
what they wanted. Believe me,
Evidence
the
by
entire
just how
Catholic Church has been corrupted and taken over by the Gentiles, exactly as prophesied in Revelation chapter 11, verse number 2. Verse number 16. Now this is what the prophet Enoch says. Let his heart be changed from a man's, and let a beast's heart be given to him. Now this is prophesying about the great tree, when the end times symbolizes Barack Obama and the United States. And let 7 times pass over him. Does that prophesy that Barack Obama will not have a full 8 years? He will only have 7 years.
See, he's always wrong. Like, that's the thing about him, is he's always wrong. Like, every single one of his prophecies clearly didn't happen. He did have a full 8 years. So, like, this is what I'm saying, is that he just gets caught up in the moment of the news cycle, and then it's on that basis that he creates his content for the sake of the clickbait, for the sake of the ad revenue.
I'm not sure this is actually a prophecy about his term of office, but in any case, I believe.
And in that sense, like, if you read it in that way, if you read his intentions in that way, it's not as insane. Like, it's insane, like, because he was grasping at straws in order to make clickbaity videos. So, like, in that sense, like, that kind of contextualizes all of the insanity to me, because it's like, obviously this is all a stretch. Obviously he's grasping at straws, and that's kind of like, if you were going to make a clickbaity YouTube channel on the basis of drawing forth like viewership from like conspiratorial, QAnon, like trad, schizo boomers, etc., then yeah, like that's gonna be the pattern of the behavior. You're gonna grasp at straws so that you can churn out these videos in high frequency, and that's just gonna be it. Now, like, I think that he also sort of believes it, so he grasps at straws, I think, sincerely and authentically. So, like, he's really trying to see how things fit together, and so that's like, so his grasping at straws is also indicative of just how much he's trying. But I do think he's underlyingly motivated by the desire for like viewership and ad revenue, etc.
Pope Benedict and Benjamin Netanyahu, after they are assassinated, then we will find out who they are.
Are you sure about that?
In fact, then they themselves will find out who they are. Because, as Nathan said in his vision, Benjamin Netanyahu, that is the Mashiach, does not know at this time who he actually is.
I don't claim to know God's plan, but in the end, I'm just saying I am it.
Okay, there you have it. We report, you decide. I've given you my opinion. I believe it shows 2 snakes entering into Pope Francis through his head and through his...
Yeah, like, I think that he definitely he believes what he's saying, like, in a fundamental way. I do believe that. Like, I do think he does really believe that he has this prophetic gift. He has this gift of prophecy to participate, I guess, in this final unveiling of the truth of the end times. Like, I think that, and he probably will use that to kind of justify these kinds of videos. But it is just all too convenient that whenever he gets into a huge topic and he spends multiple videos on that topic, it just happens to be the very kinds of topics that's going to attract that particular audience that I've talked about. It's like, why would he spend so much time talking about Trump, for example? It's because the election was going on, and Trump's QAnon boomer fan base, they're the type of people who are going to want to look at this stuff. When in reality, when you really look at Trump and you really look at the political scene in America, it has very little to do with like esoteric niche Vatican conspiracies and like Catholic prophecy.
Heart, I believe it shows that Pope Francis is possessed, and I think he needs to be exorcised.
God help us all.
I've heard that
Better
before.
than in the Vatican, where there are quite a few official exorcists. The church needs to look into this video. It is obviously a demonic or angelic manifestation. It is certainly not just a plain old smoke ring. So I don't know how I can get the bishop's attention. I don't think they pay attention to me anyway.
Well, you got that right at least.
But certainly people like Lifeside News or Michael Vorers or Spirit Daily, they are interested in things like this.
Well, yeah, now he can put those names in his tags when he uploads his video.
Why don't they cover this? Let the people know what's going on in the spirit world, because this is obviously a spiritual manifestation. I believe it is a very evil and unhealthy spiritual manifestation from the devil. And as I say, if this is the Vatican one, this they are promoting heavily for their next year's World Meeting of Families. And to me, it's pretty obvious, isn't it to you, that those are 3 sixes? How come it isn't obvious to the people in the Vatican?
I get it.
I don't get it.
How can they approve of this kind of an image? Can't they see it? I mean, this is really in your face. Maybe they want it to be in your face, or maybe someone in the Vatican is crying out for help. Maybe they're crying
It's also just like a spiral, you know?
out saying, we have been taken over by Satan. Help us out. Pope Francis later said
Also, what if they're 9s?
he doesn't remember the controversial footnote. That has got to be some kind of a joke. And I personally believe that he knows exactly what he is doing. Pope Francis is not dumb. When he says time is greater than space, I think he knows he's pulling your leg. It's surprising to me that no one has called him out on it. Time is not greater than space. Time, space, and matter are all equal. They reflect the divine Trinity, just as the 3 requirements for Holy Communion reflect the divine Trinity. They are all equally important. And Pope Francis is almost performing blasphemy against the Holy Spirit by downgrading space and by
Wow, he's really, really, really placing a lot of importance in that.
downgrading the intentions of the priest. And so, in conclusion, that is my message for today. I believe very
right.
soon, by the way, we are going to find out that Pope Francis is the false prophet, because he is going to issue a proclamation on the Bishop's Synod. And if he allows divorced and remarried Catholics to receive communion, that will be the abomination of desolation as it affects Catholics. And if you subscribers, if you see anything else in this image, be sure to put the comments below. I'm not even, for example, taking a look at this image upside down. There may be even more things in it.
I have several questions.
And as always, if you would like to know more about my ministry here on YouTube, visit my thirdeaglemedia.com website. And as always, I do offer a free copy of my book, Revelation Unraveled.
Yeah, he probably does like Altman. Altman probably likes him, frankly.
Or simply send me a message to my YouTube channel.
Whoa. This is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
Okay, all right. Cool.
Mute your phone, mute your computer. Welcome to.
Okay, yeah, didn't want to watch that. Okay, didn't want to watch the Pints with Aquinas thing. Okay, well, that was kind of interesting. I guess, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of sold. What do you think? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, is this guy still active? I'm gonna check his YouTube channel really quickly. His Third Eagle Books. Well, it looks like his content has certainly died down lately. I think he used to get a lot more engagement. Although, I don't know. I mean, it seems like he's... Yeah, his Trump videos were pretty up there. At least, relatively speaking. Yeah, looks like he's not really doing all that much anymore. But, alright, well, that was interesting. So, yeah, if you want to, if you want me to cover any topic, like I said, if you want me to, you can ask me to react to things, but also just if you want me to address some topic, if you want me to do a stream on something, on some issue or whatever, one way that you can just kind of require me to do that is to just sign up for the second tier of the Patreon. I want to thank the patron who asked me to review this, and I understand that there's some others he wants me to look at, and I will definitely be doing that this month. So that'll be kind of exciting. Well, now that it was a little bit tedious to get through at the beginning, honestly, and so that's why it was a little bit, it might have seemed a little bit tedious on my end too. You might have got that feeling going into it, but as it was going on, I kind of thought it actually got a little bit interesting. So I'm kind of looking forward to the next one then. I don't remember what one that is, but I'll have to look at it later. Actually, I think he wants me to look at it as I stream it. So yeah, that's what I'll do. All right. Well, God bless all of you. Again, thank you for the patron who asked me to do this, and thank you for the patron for being a patron. I really do appreciate that. It really means a lot, and it helps me to keep doing what I'm doing, just generally speaking, with content creation. So happy to do it. Happy to, fulfill all of the other Patreon perks that I have. One of those is that, like, if you're in the $5 tier, you can have just constant Q&A with me through the messaging system. I'll kind of pledge to answer your questions, or at least point you in the right direction to answering your questions. You get monthly book recommendations, and then for the $10, and then you get other things as well. You can look at patreon.com/classicaltheist to see what else is involved. But for the $10 one, you get this tier, this perk to request content, but also monthly articles and other things. So thank you so much for watching, and God bless you.